Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this master class. Am I audible, right? Can just somebody respond on the
Yes,
chat?
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, okay, great. So, welcome again to this master class of today. All right, my name is Ram Manohar Rai, and I am the co-founder and program director at NPOC. Uh, so today we are going to have a very interesting session, and today's session will be divided into two parts. In first part, probably we'll understand more about this data transformation and warehousing, right, and data engineering in general. And the next part, we will be going through some very small case study about the Netflix, right, and how do they use the data engineering. So that's how we are going to have our session today. Uh, and this session again is brought to you by Anproc. Probably I'll just take some time to also tell you about the Anproc. So Anproc uh, is an education platform, and it is basically driven by the experienced professional like Preetam Banerjee. So if you go to our website, you will see there are a lot of interviews of somebody like data scientists and data engineers who are talking about their projects, their own experience, right, their challenges in their job, and sometimes they also discuss a lot about their projects also, right? What was the problem definition and how what kind of issues they face and how they solved it. Right. So our data science section is really rich in this sense. Right? So continuing with our passion to bring the professionals to to guide and show their own path about their own journey. We have launched a few courses in terms of like a advert experiential program where we are also teaching some boot camps. So I will tell you more about our boot camp down the line. Right. So please don't sign up for NPROC also. Right. So without any further delay, I would like to introduce you to our expert today, who is Preetam Banerjee. Right. So Preetam has very rich experience of more than 10 years, and he has experience in diversified field in healthcare, automotive, and financial industry. So he has worked almost for 6 years for Mercedes-Benz, before research and development, before joining uh, IQVIA VA right now. So he has just shifted his job 2 months back, where he's working as a tech lead. Like he's a very strong hands-on experience, using big data tools like Apache, Kafka, streaming. Right, you can see all the tools he's working on. Right, so very strong hand. Right, and he has also got a great expertise on Azure cloud. Right, as you know, like the whole industry, the whole world is moving toward cloud. The similarly things are happening on the engineering also, data engineering also, where we are moving toward cloud. So without any further delay, I will give the stage to Preetam. Preetam, I will stop sharing my screen. You can share your screen, and if the stage is yours.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Ram. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I would like to welcome everyone in this masterclass. So before I begin, I just want to confirm that so am I clear? So is my voice audible? If anyone can just confirm. Yes, all right. So I think thanks a lot, Dipesh. All right. So just give me a moment, guys. I'll just share my screen.
So guys, when the session will start, right? You can post your questions on this chat. We will try to answer as many as questions as possible, right, at the end, given how much time we have in our hands. So please post your questions on the chat box. And as it goes without saying, keep your microphone mute.
Hello.
Yes, Preetam.
I'm extremely sorry. I think my Zoom just crashed somehow.
Okay.
Uh,
So should I share the presentation?
I'll just give it a try. I mean, if I'm still facing some problem, then maybe you can share.
Okay.
Post disable participant screen sharing. I think you need to give me some
Okay. Okay.
answers.
Yeah. I think you can share.
Yeah. Yes, I can share it right now. Okay. So the screen is visible right now. If anyone can please confirm.
I can see your text of background.
Yes, yes, yeah. All right. So I'm extremely sorry, guys, for this small glitch. There was some technical problem from my side, so that's the reason we had a little bit of delay. So I would like to just welcome everyone to join this session. Thanks a lot for finding some time out and joining the session. So today in this session, we would be uncovering the data engineering core concept, that is, that how do we do data transformation, a bit concepts on the data warehousing, and also to end this concept, we will also be actually using one of the real-time case study from one of the very popular product called Netflix. So I mean, like in this session, if I talk about the agenda, I think so we will actually start with the hierarchy of needs, that where exactly the data transformation or data engineering comes into picture. Then we'll go for data transformation, and then we'll have overview of data warehouses, and then we'll also understand a bit more into data pipeline and into ETL processes, and we'll also actually cover a bit on the ELT process. And at the end, as I told, that we will be ending up this concepts by using one of the a real-time case study from Netflix. So I think this introduction has already been given by Ram. So all right, so let's actually just so talk about this very core and the very important thing about how exactly the data world looks like. So I mean, we always talk about that we need data, and at the end of the day, what is the need of data is that we need to create some insight from the data. But it is not exactly the way how we talk about that data is sometimes, I mean, we get data in a very raw format, and the way we can only create insights is when you can read the data, right? And so usually, I mean, so when we talk about data comes in various formats. Data comes in a structured format, it comes in unstructured format, and it comes in a semi-structured format also, right? So I mean, from those formats, it is quite difficult for us to, or for a layman user to actually get an insight the way actually how we do some kind of modeling in the Excel, where you have data in a proper structure, and then on top of that you just like create some pivot tables and you create some graphs and all, and that like and that at the end of the day you get some insights. So I mean, like in the real world, when you talk about a big data, when you talk about a data which is actually coming up in a huge velocity, in huge volume, and in huge variety, then it is a bit difficult. So that's the reason we have to understand this pyramid. So this, I mean, so what we call it as a hierarchy of needs pyramid. So like, so if you talk about this, that in this in the pyramid, I would like to go in a descending order. That where we have the most amount of work, I mean, the most challenging work what we do, and the top is exactly that where you deliver the most business value out of it, right? So if we talk about in the descending order, the base of the pyramid is actually your infrastructure, right? That you cannot really just think about anything without you have a proper infrastructure of data, where you can properly get data, you can actually properly store your data, and can create a proper infrastructure or a platform where your data can reside. And that you can actually think about to collect data from any kind of sources, right? That you can think about to collect from any batch system, real-time systems, any kind of message broker. But at the end of the day, what it takes is actually to have an infrastructure where you can keep your data, right? So once you actually have infrastructure on the data, then you actually work on the data operations, right? So this operation is actually about that how do you handle the workflow of your data, how do you monitor your data, that how you're storing it, okay? How do you actually make sure that your data, what you're storing in the level 4, so which is the base, is of higher quality, right? How do you automate your deployment of the data storage, right? How do you apply the data governance? That is actually a very important thing, because when you store data, it is very important that how you govern that data also, right? So security of your data and access of your data. So this is all comes under the governance of your data. Now you think about it, that the infra is done, your operations are being done. Now you come to a bit of the movement of your data, or probably that where you do some kind of processing of your data, that is a data pipelines. That so in the pipeline you will be doing the cleansing of the data, pre-processing of data. You will be doing some kind of organization of the data, and you will be actually creating some kind of reusable data assets which can be used in multiple business use case. And based on all of these things, you will be creating pipelines of data, right? And these pipelines are basically, that, I mean, probably if I have to define the pipelines are usually components where, or a pipeline of components which helps our data to move from one destination, or to from one source to another source, or one source to another destination, and that destination can become another source for another system. And then once we have this base work done, right, the 4, 3, and 2, then you can actually come to the insights. I mean, the insights what we initially talk about, that you can actually derive some kind of analytics, and you can actually create some kind of insight saying that, how much sales that you have done, or probably some kind of predictions. So this is the place where you're actually doing the insights, where you can actually can think about to bring some kind of AI models or machine learning algorithms, or even you can do some kind of aggregations to build the insights, which is actually helpful for the business, right? So that is the reason it is very important for us to understand this data pyramid, where from bottom to top, we go in a higher business value, but from the top to bottom, we come for the amount of work. So which means that at the base, we do the majority of the work of handling the data, and which is the place where data engineers play a very important role, which we will actually, so going further, we will see in much depth that what exactly the role of data engineer, and in which particular area or the segment of this pyramid they usually play the most important role. So coming to this, that we talked about that when we have the infrastructure, and then on top of that we have the data operations, and then on top of that we have the data pipelines, right? So in this process, in the data pipeline process, we also bring a very important step is called the data transformation process, right? So in transformation process, so probably, I mean, if I have to break it down at a very layman word, transformation is just about in transforming one format of data to another format of data, right? So that format, I mean, could be that you are trying to transform some data which you are getting from the source to some format which is actually being accepted by the destination, right? I mean, say that you have already some system that you have built, but you have to make sure that that system, so which you already have built in your company, which accepts some kind of format, right? So you have to make sure that whatever the source that you're getting, you have XML, JSON, CSV, whatever the source that you're getting, probably you can also get the unstructured data in probably in binaries, right? So you have to make sure that this data is actually being transformed, and it is being made available in the format what your company understand, or probably, I mean, your other architecture understand, right? So if you just like to take a look at this example, right, or this diagram. So we get data from multiple sources. We might get data from the sales, from the CRM, from any kind of third-party data, which we are taking it from API, maybe, that we might be consuming data from some third-party API to collect the weather information, to collect any open source data, right? And then these all data sources are being taken up, they are being aggregated, and it goes through a ETL and ELT process, which is called extract, transformation, load, and extract, load, transformation. And then after this transformation, the exact transformation happens during the T phase of the ETL or the ELT, right? And then once you transform that, and then you can actually store that into any kind of warehouse. So this warehouse could be a data warehouse, or you can just think about to store that into a storage, a simple storage also. Maybe I can just think about Azure Blob Storage, or if I take the example of AWS, it could be the AWS S3 buckets also. And then from the data warehouse, you can actually perform the OLAP operations. Like you can perform analytics, you can perform BI, and you can actually just use some ML model, where you can take the data set from this warehouse, and you can train your model, and a lot of the other activities also we can do. But this is actually the very high level view of how transformation works. But going forward, we'll be going a bit deeper into the ETL and ELT, because this is the heart of when we talk about transformations. So time for a quick poll. So Ram, how exactly this poll is going to work?
Actually, I have launched a poll, guys. Please, it will be on your screen. Straight away, I think the poll is as per our expectation.
Yes, exactly.
Probably I'll give them some 10 more minutes. Okay, so this is the result, Preetham.
So this is
Right.
actually very interesting. I think I mean, that is what we also expected that from this audience group. I mean, so what is the type of people that I mean, like so I mean, who came here to get this knowledge? So I mean, and this is actually the right thing to go forward for data engineering. So maybe I would like to share the results of this poll. That so the preferable language what we use is actually Python. I mean, so Python is leading, and then we have SQL. And then we have Scala and R, and then we also have Java.
Python. Java पण आहे, Python पण आहे.
Suhail, can you go on mute? Probably we can discuss the questions if we have. We will do it later. Yeah.
So yeah, thanks a lot as well. So probably, I mean, so we will actually take your questions at the end. So don't worry about that. Please, I mean, keep your questions in your hand. So I mean, so this is actually a good trend, guys. So Python is the language, I mean, so which is having a very bright future. So when we talk about data engineering problem statements, right? And apart from this, SQL, yes, right? SQL is the must. Okay, I mean, so we might actually think about SQL is a pretty old language, and why it does make sense to be a pro in SQL, but like it is a very important language right now. I mean, going forward, I mean, if you are actually in the data world. And then the next right is Java and then Scala. So like it's a good thing to go ahead with. So thanks a lot, guys, for taking the poll. So we will go forward.
Yeah.
So all right. So coming back to our presentation. So now actually we just have seen about the transformation about it, that how exactly the transformation works. I mean, how do we get data from multiple data source, and then how do we store into the data warehouse after some transformations, right? So let's talk a little bit on the data warehousing, right? So data warehousing is one of the very key concept. I mean, so when we talk about data world, right? So when we talk about data engineering or data analytics, anything, right? So I mean, so we have to really think about that. How do we store data, right? So when we have this particular thing in mind, that we have multiple sources where we can collect data, but the question comes up that where do you want to store it, right? So there are like different ways, I mean, that we will go. So while going forward, we will actually cover that this ETL and the ELT process, right? So after that particular process, we have to store it somewhere, right? So data warehouse plays a very important role, where you can actually store your structured data, semi-structured data, and also the unstructured data, right? In a very optimized way. And by mean a very optimized way is this, that you can actually have multiple partitions. You can actually optimize your data based on keys and all. So which actually makes sure that so once you store your data into the data warehouse, it makes it your data becomes highly available for any kind of OLAP transactions or any kind of OLAP analytics that you want to do on top of that, right? So I mean, now if we just spend a bit time here to actually understand the architecture of the data warehouse, right? So in data warehouse, I mean, so as I told you that we can collect data from multiple sources, and by doing some transformation, we can actually store it back into the data warehouse as a storage, right? So, and in data warehouse, I mean, we can store the data in a tabular format, in a raw format also, if we want. I mean, I'm talking about unstructured data. So going forward, that so you might be learning about Azure Synapse. In Azure Synapse, you can actually write your binary information also, right? And you can create a pipeline that, I mean, how exactly your binary data, say images and any audio files can be used by any pipeline. And then your data warehouse will always be having a meta store. The meta store is the one which usually contains the master file, right? So because in data warehouse, sometimes, we only store the key information about it. Say that, I mean, like if I'm trying to store any sales information, right? I'll be storing a very key data about that sales. But if you want to make any insight about that a particular record, right, then you need to make sure that what is the sale ID means, right? So what is that sale item, right? So these all informations are basically being picked up by the metadata. So that's why metadata container or the repository plays a very important role, where we keep all the master information separately from the data warehouse, right? And then once you have the data being stored in your data warehouse, then we have the data access layer, which is called data mart. Data mart is a kind of concept, which is being developed in the data warehouse world only. So which is actually a kind of giving you a generic data access layer. So here, in this example, you might be seeing that all the data marts are being divided in, like sales mart, marketing mart, HR mart. And then, so, I mean, like you have all the data access layer, which you can, so which layer is actually responsible to give you the data from your warehouse. And then you have all the access tools, or probably your reporting tools and all, which actually helps you to perform the insights or to generate the insights out of all the data what you have stored in the data warehouse. So going forward, we have another poll which we would like to bring in front of you.
The poll is like that. Probably we could have added one more option of none of the above, right?
Yeah, but the results are quite interesting. I'm just going to share this just after this. So I mean,
so last 5 seconds, guys. Please, Give your vote if you haven't done yet. Okay. So yes, I'm sharing the results now. Pritham.
Sure. Are you sharing?
So, yeah, I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, great.
No, so I'm sharing the result. It's still your screen. So guys, there's no right and wrong in this poll, right? It's about what you are using. We are just taking a survey.
Exactly, yeah.
But sir, first option is right.
Guys, I mean, just probably you can just keep your questions with you. I mean, we will make sure that we will answer all your questions at the end of the session. So please keep your questions with you, and we will give you ample amount of time to clarify all your doubts. So guys, I just want to share this thing that I mean, so this is a very amazing results. You know that this is the actual condition what is actually happening in the market. That right now we still are using a lot in the batch processing. The ETLs are mostly being used in the batch processing. And cloud natives are also being used, particularly. I mean, like when you talk about in Azure, we have ADF. In AWS, we have got Glue, and open source is being also used as Airflows and all, right? And the real time is the one I just like want to share you this, from my experience, that real time ETLs are the one which is gonna get a very big pace going forward, because I mean, so majority of the companies and the projects, I mean, we are turning away from the batch to ETLs. I mean, like, so a batch to real time ETLs. So just keep this thing like in your mind, so going forward, the batch analytics is gonna be somehow very less. I mean, yes, of course, Spark will still be there, but Spark streaming will be heavily used. And then on top of that, we also would be using quite heavily as Flink. And then, like if we go for the cloud native, we have got a lot of stream analytics, what we use. Cool, great. Once again, great. Thanks for taking this poll. So let's move forward. So now let's actually cover the very important topic, which is the ETL, right? So I mean, so when we are talking about transformation, I mean, you might have heard me saying about ETL and the ELT, right? So let's actually understand what exactly is ETL, right? As the name suggests, it is a extract, transform, load, right? The name is pretty much clear that we are extracting data from a source, we are transforming it, and then we are loading it. The order is very important, right? So I mean, so when you go for the next process, that is the ELT, the only change is the transformation, that where you are doing transformation and when you're doing the load. So this actually makes a big difference, because so this is your primary decision that you have to take prior you start working on a pipeline, or you start working into a data engineering project, that you have to make sure that what is or how exactly your pipeline will look like, right? Or what are the different stages of your pipeline, right? So that's the reason it's very important to understand this. So in this ETL process, so we extract data, we actually take the data into a staging area, and then we perform the transformation, where in the transformation we might take a call, that we don't actually have to load entire data into our storage, right? So we can actually take only the data what we want, and even we can make sure that the time when we are storing the data, we will make sure that the data is being stored only in the format how we want in our analytics, right? So this makes your query and analytics much faster and much more efficient, right? So transformation is being done before we store data into the warehouse or data lake, anywhere but a storage solution. And then once it is being stored, we can use another layer of transformation when we want to create some insight on top of that data. So then we have the ETL process, the ELT process, right? So ELT, as the name says, that we do the extraction. Of course, the extraction is going to be the same across everywhere. But if you see here that this order has been changed here, right? That we are doing the load first and then we are transforming it, right? So this thing is that, so we are extracting it and we are directly loading this data and then we are transforming it. So what does that mean? That we are not doing any kind of filtration, any kind of, of transformation of any formats prior we store the data. We just like get the data from the source, we just like kind of aggregate and we store directly into the data warehouse. And then once we store it, and then on top of that, we perform transformations, right? So now you might actually ask me this question that, so what are the cases, I mean, like when we go for the ELT and not exactly the ETL? Because I told you that ETL make sure that you can actually write your query in a much faster way. But then why do we have a ELT, right? So ELTs are very important when you actually think about that say that you have a use case where you need the data to be very quickly available, right? That you don't want to actually waste your time in the transformation, and you just want to just make sure that whenever you have data in the source, you want this data in your warehouse so that you can immediately perform the analytics, right? In that particular case, ELT plays a very important role, right? And ELT is also very important when you have a huge amount of data, right? Then where you do not want to perform any kind of transformation in your pipeline, whereas you want to perform the pipeline in the batch way, right? So if you have a huge amount of data and if you go for ETL, then your data pipeline throughput will definitely go down. All right, so it's time for our third poll, and I think the last poll for the session.
Yes, I have launched the poll, guys. Okay, last 5 seconds for the poll, guys. I'll close it after 5 seconds. Okay. So here's the poll, Preetham. I have shared the results with everyone.
Amazing, amazing. So this is actually, I mean, like the answer is this, that I mean, so majority of the people actually have shared that they're a bit confused. So this is quite obvious, so this was my case. I mean, when I started my journey with data engineering, I'm talking about 5.5 years back. So yeah, I mean, so we actually have the next slide where we talk about a little bit more on the roles and who can play what role. So, I mean, please be with us. So that's going to be very interesting. All right. So coming to this, right? So this is the one where we sometimes get a lot of questions, and we also get a lot of doubts that what is what, right? And as like each role is meant to do what particular activity, right? So so let's actually just like kind of so demystify some of the jargons what we actually see in the data world. So you might be actually hearing about data science, data engineering, data analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data, right? So data science is actually, I mean, like probably like, say, if I just give you one liner statement of all these jargons, what we keep hearing in the industry, data science is usually a scientific field or a scientific method or a process or, algorithm to extract the knowledge and insights from a structured and unstructured data and apply the knowledge and actionable insights from data across a broad range of application domains, right? So where you are actually using the computer science and the algorithms on the data, and on top of this, you are applying the insights and the actionable insights to derive some better insights out of it. And this is actually pretty much linked to one of the domain. I mean, you can think about a financial domain, automotive domain, aerospace domain like this, right? Now coming to data engineering. Data engineering is more, that how exactly you can leverage or it's more of a software engineering approach to design and develop an information system, which is actually built on top of your data. Data analytics is, data analysis is actually a process of inspecting, cleansing, transforming, and modeling data with a particular goal of discovering something useful information, right? So analytics has been performed for a very long time. As I told you in the very beginning, that analytics or analysis you can actually perform on normal Excel also, right? So there is no problem in doing that, right? So, but the goal is this, that you wanted to find out some better insights and some new useful information that you can actually provide as insights, right? Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is something, I mean, I will just like go with a bookish definition because there are different definitions. So AI is actually the ability of a computer or a robot controlled by a computer to do tasks that are usually done by humans because they require human intelligence, right? So this is actually that you're giving the intelligence to the machines, that whatever the kind of cognitive ability, the ability of thinking that we have, so that human has, that can be done by the machine, right? And in AI, so if you actually go a bit deeper into this, we have got different types of AI. We have got a weak AI, we have got strong AI, and we have got artificial super intelligence, right? I think probably, I mean, you guys all might have seen the movie iRobot, right? So iRobot is actually the one, I mean, so which usually falls in the super intelligence, where the robots are actually having feelings and all this stuff, right? So this is the third level of AI, I mean, which we have not reached that much until right now. So we are mostly, I mean, so the kind of use cases, the kind of models what we deal with AI is mostly actually in the weak AI genre. So machine learning is actually more of, that how do you study the computer algorithm and how do you actually automatically improve the experience of the computer algorithm by the use of data. right? So how do you actually improve an algorithm? By using more data, right? And coming to big data is, as the name says, that it is actually a large volume of data, which is actually can be taken as a both unstructured or a semi-structured or a structured way, right? And in the big data, we always take a 3V into consideration. First V is your volume of data, the velocity of data, and the variety of data. So when these things are, and so when these three things are pretty big, and when data is actually being captured in an unstructured, structured, or in a semi-structured way, then we actually term that as a big data. So now coming to the roles, right? So we have data engineering role, we have software engineering role, we have data or a business analyst role or a research role, right? So ideally, this particular set diagram will be, so quite helpful for you to understand that. I mean, like how exactly the roles are coming up. So for software engineering, as we know that, the main work of software engineers are to make sure that we write the programs of how we can make a system, how we can make take a system into the production. We can work on the APIs. We are working on the servers. We are working on the cloud computing and mostly on the automation. Data engineers are mostly who will be working on the data pre-processing, into feature engineering, into data cleansing, into probably so creating the workflows, into creating the pipelines, into doing transformations of data, and making sure that how efficiently I can store the data so that the data can be queried at a high efficiency or at a high throughput, right? Analyst is the one, I mean, so what I told you, that, I mean, these guys are usually the business guys, or usually the domain guys who have got a good domain knowledge about their business, and they also use the data, and they create different kind of relations, right? And with that, and by finding those relations, they usually find out that how do you create better insights. And usually, I mean, as a tools and all, they quite heavily work with SQL, and they also use some kind of dashboard tools as Power BI, Tableaus, and all. And research is usually, that where, I mean, so where we talk about, that where we actually create the algorithms, we work on the algorithms, we work on the models, right? So data engineers are the guy who have the skills from software engineering and data engineering also. Data analysts are the guys who should mostly be the guys, I mean, that who have the skills on the research part and also on the analyst part. And data scientist is the guy who almost plays the role of everything at some portion, right? So to end this particular thing, I mean, as I understood that we all have a lot of doubts about this role. So do not get confused about this, because so this particular roles are not a kind of standard. So I mean, each company will be having their own names. Okay, so that's the reason. I mean, probably, so if you just take example of this, I mean, we just found out this under definition or job description, that data scientists in a big company like FANG, right, like Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, are often similar to advanced analytics, while data scientists in smaller companies are more similar to ML engineers, right? So, I mean, do not get confused about this. Data engineering is, I mean, like what we are trying to understand is more on data engineering part, right? So data engineering takes that you have to make sure that you implement your software engineering skills. And on top of that, how do you make sure that your data is actually being collected from multiple sources, it is being properly aggregated, and it is being stored in the right particular way. So that on top of that particular data, some kind of analytics, some kind of machine learning can be performed, right? So if I just probably try to give you an overview, that the way actually how it works is that first of all you have got data, the raw data. Then on the raw data, data engineers work, right? And they make sure that the data is actually in some format which can be used by further probably say roles, right? And then on that particular output data, it is being used by data scientists. So in a typical company environment, you'll be finding that we have got a big data engineering team and a small data scientist team, right? So, and where data scientists always relies on data engineers to make sure that the data, I mean, so how they're getting, so they might be asking them that we don't want data in this particular format, in other formats. So all kind of reformatting, all kind of data cleansing. So these all things are being done by the engineering team, and they are heavily depending on that. Without data cleansing, without a proper data, no one else can derive an insight. So that's the reason this particular role plays a very a key role in a company, and so who is actually working on data. I hope it does gives you some idea. Okay, so I would like to actually just hand it over to Ram, probably to take it up on the slide. Ram?
Probably I will take it from the next slide. This one you can explain.
Okay, fine, cool. So, all right. I mean, so I was talking a lot about the data engineering, right? I mean, like how data engineering role is important, right? So, I mean, I would suggest you that, I mean, like if you want to go for data engineering, just like ask yourself that, I mean, so you have, I mean, so do you have the passion for engineering? Okay. So if you have the passion for engineering and you also want to build data systems, right, on top of like, or by using the engineering principles, then data engineering is the right thing for you, right? So I mean, like you can actually understand that data science is actually, you know, that 80% of data engineering, and the rest is your insights, the insights and probably so creating model and all. So I mean, like if you actually want to play a role in the 80% of the data engineering, or 80% of the most coolest thing what you've seen, probably, you know, say any kind of say, I mean, like, so when we go for the Netflix, we always actually so keep hearing about the about the recommendation system, right? So that is actually a implementation of data science. But as I'm telling you that 80% of the entire data science recommendation is being done by the data engineers, right? So if you want to play a role in that particular area, data engineering is for you. So if you love to learn a new piece of technology with every new project, right? So because in every new project, we always, you know, keep exploring about what is the right component that we have to use, what are the right tools that we have to use, then data engineering is actually a place for you. If you are really a true team player, right? So you actually have a good energy for having a good discussion. You have, you know, a good a learning experience. I mean, like say, if you have this particular passion of learning from more experienced people, right? Then data engineering is for you, because in data engineering field, every day we face new challenges, you know, and every day we say that like, so for today, you know, that I'm pretty much sure there'll be a new challenge. I have to fix it, and there'll be a lot of learning, right? So then, I mean, if you fall yourself, or like if you see that you're into this area, then data engineering is for you. So it is actually your cup of tea. Yeah, Ram. So I'm handing you.
Yes. So, guys, I will just give you a brief about NTOC experiential program, and probably I'll take around 6 or 7 minutes, and post that Pritam will continue with this session where he'll talk more about Netflix and how Netflix is using the data engineering. Right. So, yeah. So, I was discussing earlier, right, that we are trying to bring the experience of the real professionals, into training also. That's why we have thought of launching a data, an experiential program. Right. So we are launching a 16-week program which is focused on data engineering, and this program is taken by people, who already have some kind of exposure to programming, right? So we are kind of putting a prerequisite for this program as knowledge of programming. For people who don't have this prerequisite, we have devised a module, right, which you can do even before you can start the program, right? Peter, can you go to the next slide? So this program actually we have it's a 16-week program, and it's a 16-week live classes program which will happen on the weekend, right? So we will have one class on Saturday, we will have one class on Sunday, right? And in this course will be divided into different competencies. So we have divided it into 11 to 12 competencies, right? Where every competency in data engineering will be taken by an expert who is coming from that field, right? So let's say, for example, the Pritam is going to teach you the real-time streaming because he has the hands-on experience in that field. Similarly, person who's going to teach you the warehouse, he has this experience and expertise in warehouse, right? So the idea is that not only you get exposure to a lot of experts, right, but you are also studying from somebody who has already done these things, right? So that they can bring their own experience into picture, right? And every competency that you're going to learn, you are going to have a very good project on it. And the way we have designed the project is such that you are able to share these projects on your GitHub, right? And you can build your own profile using these projects, which can later on you can use to present to your interviewer whenever you go for interviews, right? So in this by the end of this program, you will have some 7 to 8 very good projects to put it on a GitHub, and and that will also demonstrate your competencies in data engineering. Right? So in this program, actually, we are also trying to instill some parts of the professional skills also, right? Because at the end of the day, job is not only about writing program, but it's also about the managing your stakeholders, right? Presenting your ideas to your bosses, right? Having the salary negotiation with them, right? So these are some of the professional skills that would like to impart into you. So we will have some professional skills classes also in this program, right. And other than this, we will also have this 100% placement assistance, where which will include your CV review, your interview preparation, and we are also tying up. We are reaching out to companies also, so that we can arrange for the interviews also for you by the end of this program. Right. So I will give you also a little bit brief about what this program is about. Peter, can you go to the next slide? So as I told, right, this program we have divided it into multiple islands. So every competency we are calling island, right? So this program expects you to know Python, as well as some idea about SQL. So we will start this program with Python, but the Python class will mainly deal with competencies that you need to be successful as a data engineer, right? It's also more of a revision for people who are already very well versed with the Python, right? Similarly, we'll again go to SQL, right, which is again more of a revision for people who are very well versed with it. But and before this, we will have some kind of prerequisite module also we have prepared in case if you feel that you are not comfortable, right? So by the time you all are in this program, I expect you to be at certain level in Python and SQL, right? Because we're going to spend very small time in Python and SQL. Right. From third week, then our major program will start. There we'll be teaching you about the different type of database and data modeling. Right. So this program we are going to have on Azure. So most of the competencies that we will be dealing in this program, it will be done on the Azure cloud. Right. So before we move further, we will have a class which is around cloud and Azure. Right. Then we will jump deep into the data engineering with big data and Hadoop development. We'll take the data lake, and then we will be going for data processing and batch processing, and and then we will go for this real-time stream data processing, which will be taken by Preetham. Right. So all the experts who are going to take different islands, their details are available on our website also. So along with these concepts, we will also be having a few classes on data governance and security, right? Because when you join a company, right, data engineering will not be a very big team, right? So you may have to start, having the idea about the security aspect also, the governance aspect also, right? So this is a whole idea about our program. So we have shared a link of our website. You can go there, you can register yourself, and some of our educational counselors will reach out to you, and you can ask him a lot of other questions also. So that's it about our program. Uh, Please log register on the link given, and we will reach out to you. Right? Peter, back to you. Please continue with the session.
Right. Great. So I think, guys, I mean, you just got a very nice idea about that. So what this program is about, and so what this program is going to deliver to you, right? And so this one particular point which I can share about this program is just think about that. So what is your state when you are entering the program, and what will be the state when you exit the program, right? So that's the reason I think so what Ram told, that we call this particular thing as a boot camp, right? So we make sure that once you actually exit the boot camp, you are actually quite experienced data engineer with a good experience of all the real-time projects. Cool. All right. So let's jump to one of the most interesting part right now. I think we have learned a lot on the theory part. I mean, we talked about the data pyramid. We talked about the transformation process. We talked about the data warehousing, storage, and we also a little bit understood that what is the core difference between the ETL and the ELT, and we also talked about that what are the different roles that we have. That is so what we keep hearing in the data industry. So now let's talk about one real use case from one of our very popular product and a streaming application called Netflix. So before I just begin, I just want to share a couple of stats about Netflix. So this Netflix company was being founded in 1997, I guess, almost 23 years back. And that, so the time when they started, they actually have started as just a DVD selling company, a DVD selling and renting company. And right now, after 23 years, their revenue has reached to $25 billion. And this particular statistics, which I'm going to share you right now, it is actually been taken last week. So maybe, so what Netflix says that, they grows 2% every night. That is what they say. That is what they claim, right? So their revenue right now is 25 billions. They have got in total 208 million users. Think about it. They have got 208 million users who are actually a subscribed user of Netflix across 130 countries. Their services are actually available across 130 countries. So so now I'm going to share you a very interesting fact, because we all do Netflixing, right? So the average analytics or the statistics says that an average person spend 3.2 hours every day watching Netflix. 3.2 hours every day watching Netflix. This is the average statistic that is being shared by Netflix, right? And Netflix, you will not actually believe, I share you about the revenue. They have a revenue of $25 billion, but they spent $17.3 billion to maintain the application, and to actually they spend on the content production. They have a lot of, they have their own originals. So they spend $17.3 billion into the core video contents, and also to make sure that they maintain the infrastructure so that we get a better experience, right? And Netflix is one of the company, where, so we say that it's a complete tech-driven company where 2/3 of the workforce is actually technical guys, right? So so you can understand, that what are the kind of complexities what they actually deal with and that's the reason, why we have taken a Netflix case study. So now let's go to a problem, right? So let's actually come to a problem. So so this particular problem is actually how many visitors does Netflix get every day? Okay, so this is actually a problem, right? So for this thing, we just have to spend a minute to understand about how exactly Netflix perform the customer analytics. So Netflix spend a lot of their effort and their money, they actually make a big investment to perform the customer analytics. And in the customer analytics, there are three different pillars what they actually consider. One is called identifying the user persona. They say in this thing, so whoever is actually a user of Netflix, they have a persona for that user, and in that persona they know that what are the taste of that particular user. And by taste, that if you have a taste on technology, if you have a taste on watching the originals, if you have a taste on watching, so what is the type of the movies and the ways how you are actually interacting the Netflix application. So with all this data, actually they create a persona, and they have a user interaction analysis. So they actually do a very a strong user interaction analysis. And with this thing, they create a profile for you. So probably, if you can remember that, so once you log into Netflix, the first thing what you see is actually you have to select a profile, right? And you can create multiple as a profile for you. You can create a profile for you, your parents, your kids, whatever, right? So what is the main reason that why they do that? So because they want to actually capture all your interactions. So whatever that you're doing, how much time that you're spending into the Netflix, they want to capture that. Why? So that your profile can have a better recommendation, that you can have a better categorization of the movies, right? And then the final thing is this, that they have got a very robust feedback system, right? So we can give the feedback at any point of time. And trust me that none of the feedbacks are just being captured for namesake, right? So they actually just work a lot into the feedback, because as I told you that they are a complete technology company, and they are in the mission to make this particular streaming application the best and to give a very best experience for the users, right? So now, let's come back to the problem that about how many visitors does Netflix get every day. So think about it, that they have got a huge amount of content that actually available across 130 countries. So the amount of data what they are getting every day, and that is not just from one of the source, they are getting it from multiple devices, right? That you can watch Netflix in your television, in your PlayStation, in your mobile, in your iPad. So you have got multiple ways how you're interacting with the system, right? So all this data are being captured and it's being actually stored. So now you think about it. Now, if you actually have to find out that how many probably how many visitors that Netflix get every day in a normal traditional RDBMS way, what you might be doing. So you might be having a table, and maybe you'll be having the data, which is actually, a kind of a user ID is a primary key where you have all the user ID and their interactions. And then maybe what you'll do is this, that you will actually group that particular thing on the day and by user ID, and then you'll find out the count, right? So that's a very layman approach at what we might take if we think about the RDBMS way, right? But now you think about it, that particular way, will it work if you are talking about you are handling 30 petabytes of data in a day? Right. So, I mean, so in that particular case, if you want to do an aggregation like that particular way in RDBMS, your RDBMS will definitely crash. It does not matter that how powerful your system is, right? So that's the reason. So now we will be actually talking about some principles or some steps, what we actually take to get to this particular result, right? So what are the basic steps what we take, right? So the first step what we take is for data exploration, right? So in this exploration, I mean, probably, so what is the exploration, right? I mean, like, why do we actually, I mean, call it as exploration, right? So this exploration is the one which actually, so takes you from the data, the raw data to insight. It is the first steps to actually go towards the insight from the raw data, right? So, I mean, so what exactly, I mean, like, say, if I give you a very simple example of the exploration in a normal layman term is this, that, I mean, we explored the deep sea to find out the new sea life, right? Or the new life form. Right, so we explore the deep sea to find out the new life form. So which means this, that you're exploring the data to find out that what data can be used, right? So you find out that what data sources that you can use to solve your problem, right? That you can actually find out that some data is available in the log format, something is available in the data warehouse. So you are looking for something that will actually solve your problem. That is exploration for you, and you decide that what are the sources that you can actually use it, right? So in this thing, you actually take the structure into consideration, the volume of data into consideration, granularity into consideration, and the frequency into consideration, right? So now going to the next step, which is actually the data modeling. So this is a very important step because this is the one which will actually help us to perform the next step, because I mean, so without this, the next step is not possible. So in this, so in the modeling, so I mean, like, say, if I actually give you one definition of that, what is data modeling? So data modeling can be defined as a process of analyzing the things of interest to your organization and how these things relate to each other. Understand this. The data modeling is a process of analyzing the things of interest. So in the previous process, you understood that what are the things of interest for you, right? Now you want to actually analyze the things of interest, and you want to create the relation between the things that what you actually have found out, right? So in this thing, the first step, or probably the first module, like say, is about to give a structure or to find out the structure of the data, right? That you can actually find out some data is available in a simple row format, or probably in RDBMS format, right? And something is actually, say, available in a semi-structured format, that is in a JSON. Something is available in a text file, right? So you actually find out the structure. Then you find out the dimension of the data. And here by dimension, I mean, that, so what is the volume of the data? I mean, like, so what are the varieties of data, I mean, that you're getting from all the devices? So as I told you that, so Netflix actually captures and segregates the data based on the access type, or probably the access from or the device from which you're trying to access the Netflix, right? And across the regions, that from what particular region, what device, right? So they capture that what device, what OS. So in that particular depth, they actually also captures this data. So this is also important to find out the dimensions. And then find out the metrics, right? So this metrics is one where you actually so this metrics is the one where you actually find out that what are the key parameters what you want to capture from the data. For this particular case, maybe, I mean, we can take example of as a visitor count. We want to find out the existing members or the repeating visitors, right? And then at the end is the relation. So because, I mean, in the code definition, I told you that we want to find out the relation between the things, right? So we want to find out that how this data is actually related to another entity. I mean, like, say, you will be creating multiple entities, right? So how exactly the entity to entity relation is there? Even you can think about the one column or one row data is actually linked to the other data, which is actually not in exactly RDBMS or in a row format way. So you find out the relations over there. And as we know, in a very basic way, we have the one-to-one relation, one-to-many relation, many-to-many, and the many-to-one relation, right? So now the next very important step is the transformation. So, I mean, I told you in the last step, right, that so if you are not having a right modeling, then you cannot go for transformation, because in transformation, you need to know that how do you parse your data, right? So how do you actually read your data, right? So this is actually so if you see here that in the left-hand side, you have all the sources that you have finalized in the first step, that is in the exploration step, right? And here you actually have also found out that what is the modeling for you. So you actually have done the data modeling for you. And then once that particular structure is being defined, you are sending it to the transformer, right? And in this transformer, you can do filtration, you can do enrichment of the data, because sometimes that you get a very raw information which you actually wanted to enrich that with some other data to make sure that that the data is actually full, right? And then you standardize the data, and then eventually you aggregate the data, right? And then once these steps are being completed, then the output you can store into any kind of storage, right? The storage can be done into data warehouse, it can be done into the S3 buckets, the Elastic DB, Hive, whatever, right? So this is a place where you exactly find out that what is the problem statement. The problem statement was this, that so what is the user count, right? So how many users are visiting Netflix every day? So this is the aggregation what you're basically doing here. And then that particular result you're storing into another output, which can be probably used by any kind of say visualization tool or any kind of other system which is being used in the whole pipeline, right? And then eventually, this is the most important thing, I mean, which we sometimes tend to ignore, that about quality of data, right? So I mean, so this quality of data is something that cannot be defined by some statement, but I can say this thing in my statement that ideally you can tell a data is of high quality if it fits its intended use in all the operations and any kind of decision making, right? So your data is of high quality is if you can actually use that in the proper way how you have planned, right? And while doing these things, so a couple of problems what you face here is this, that we actually find out the trends of data. We get a problem of missing data, that I mean, so where we actually have to make sure that so we do a right imputing, and then we make sure that there is no missing data or there is no noise in the data. And then we also find out that so what are the anomalies in the data, right? So these all things are actually the one which can destroy the next downstream application. That if you have this kind of problems like in your data, then say that on the output you want to actually build a ML model, right? Then your ML model will not be trained properly because your data is actually garbage, right? So a couple of things, I mean, what we have to keep it in mind, because this is a very important thing, because data quality is something what comes after every stage of your transformation, storage. Every stage we take quality into consideration, right? So a couple of attributes that you need to keep it in mind is this, that your data should be complete, that whatever the possible data that is required, it is actually present. Your data should be in a conformant way, which means that your data is stored in an appropriate and standardized format. Data should be consistent, which means that there should not be any conflict in the information within or between the systems. And the last thing is this, that your data is in a timely manner. So which means that data is created, maintained, and available quickly as it is required. So these are the four attributes what you should keep it in mind. So when we talk about the quality or the attributes of the data quality. So now let's summarize this, so what exactly we learned from that particular problem statement. So this is actually a typical kind of workflow or a typical kind of pipeline what you'll be seeing across all major data engineering projects, right? So you first of all have the exploration of data, then you find the source, then you go for the modeling of data, then you do the transformation of data, and then you actually make sure that data is in high quality. And once these particular steps are done, we go for the code review also, because I mean, so once you actually do the transformations and so all the coding, so it has to be reviewed with the sample data, right? And this particular thing is actually a type of a cyclic activity, that unless and until you actually are sure that so whatever that you are expecting, it is being delivered out of this particular zone. So you actually keep repeating the process. And once you are sure about it, then we have got an automated deployment process, which we sometimes call it as a CI/CD or DevOps. And then so after the DevOps, I mean, your model, your jobs are being deployed in some environment, and which will require a constant monitoring and the audits to make sure that your pipeline is running at a proper scale. So now this is the one which I want to show you as a last information about or from the Netflix case study. So this is actually one of the real-time architecture from Netflix. That how exactly they capture all our events, and how do they do the profiling of a user, right? So let's actually understand, I mean, probably how we are doing it. I mean, I'll just try to make it a little bit at a high level, because we'll not go that deeper. So as I'm not exactly sure that how much is your understanding into all of these components, but we will make sure that at the end of this bootcamp that you know everything about all the components what we are showing here, right? So here, if you see that we have all the subscriber activity. So whatever that we are doing, right? So I mean, so that can actually so talk about that you're clicking on a movie, you're doing a drag like in the movie, and you're clicking back. So whatever the event that we particularly call as a CDC, that is called change data log. So whatever change that data is being logged, and that log is being used for our further analysis. And so this particular CDC or the event data is being actually ingested by using the core MQ or the message broker as a Kafka. And then from Kafka, by using the Kafka sync, we simply actually store the data into the Amazon S3. So understand this, that so Netflix is actually heavily using the AWS infrastructure. So they are actually using quite heavily the S3, Redshift, and the other services from the AWS. So they are quite heavily depending on the AWS cloud provider. So then, so from the Kafka sync, we stored this like into the S3 as a raw. I mean, like as the raw data is being stored into the Amazon S3 bucket. And from this raw data, we can actually so store that into the data warehouse. And from this, we can actually create the reporting service also. But how these things are coming, because from this warehouse, so if you want to create some kind of reporting service, you need some kind of processing also, right? So from this data storage layer, right? So these are all the storage layer. So from this storage layer, we have got a pipeline. So in this pipeline, you can actually make use of Spark. You can actually use Pig. So you can use this query language as a Presto, and you can actually kind of say perform your transformation. You can perform your processing or any kind of computation, and you can store your data back into the storage also. So if you see here that this red are usually the data movement and the white are usually the data access, right? So in this data pipeline, if you see that it is actually accessing the data from the storage, where it might be actually reading the data from the raw S3 format or even from the data warehouse. And then in the pipeline, we are using Spark, or maybe we can use a Pig ETL also to perform some kind of computation. And then maybe the output, you might want to store it back into the storage, right? And then once you have all this data being stored here, then so they are creating so one more component for the fast storage. This is actually for the fast access of your data, right? So here, if you see that they are using the Snowflake and the AWS Redshift, right? So this particular layer is being actually served by using Druid or by using the Elastic. So this particular layer is actually important. So when you actually go for or like say if you have any kind of say need where you want to have a fast access of your data, so that's the reason they are using all the visualization are being say picked up from this layer. So for the visualization in Netflix, they are primarily using Tableau. So Tableau is the one what they use primarily, and apart from that, they also have a few other tools. I mean, what they're using, I mean, as I know, so Abacus is being used. They use the normal Matplotlib or the Seaborn library for doing a lot of visualizations, right? And they also have an interactive query layer. So this interactive query layer is the one which actually directly query from the data storage, right? So where say inside this, they also have, so they are using Presto, or maybe they'll be using Spark SQL. So this is the one, the Tableau is the one which is being used by the Netflix corporates, right? So if you see here, so these are the Netflix corporates. So they don't actually care about writing, some kind of Spark job or some kind of Spark query and all these things. They want to use on the Tableau, and they want to use on Python. But these guys are actually the analysts, the core analysts who actually wants to get hold of a little bit more raw data, right? So that's the reason they are okay to write Spark job by using Python, or maybe by using a simple Python, by using pandas and all, right? So this is actually a overall data flow framework that is being used by Netflix to do a user profiling for us. And this is a real-time one. This is not something that is being shown for demonstration. This is the one that is being shared public by Netflix. So now let's go to the next one. So now, just understand that how a typical data engineering project looks like, or I mean, like, so who are the different roles, I mean, who are being hired for any data engineering project. So, I mean, we have a requirement for UI engineers. I mean, if we say need to build any kind of UI where we want to show some custom analytics and all, we have the need of data engineers, which is the very important thing here. Data analyst, data scientist, and we need a data platform, the platform on which your whole ETL pipelines and everything are built, right? And And in a typical way, your data engineering project runs for, from months to year also, because so this is like quite difficult to say that how long your project might run. So it is completely depending on the business case. But for me, I was being a part of a project which was running for more than 2.5 years. Okay, and so so that is actually based on, so what are the new type of use case that you want to bring, the new type of source that you want to integrate. So all those things like comes into picture when you talk about the length of the project. And so these are the typical technology what you will be actually using in any data engineering project. So irrespective of the industry, so this is the very core technology what you will be using across any kind of data engineering project. So you'll be using Ruby Notebook for any kind of notebooking. You'll be using Core SQL. You will be using the Airflow for the workflow orchestration, Data Factory, then PostgreSQL, MongoDB, Azure Blob Storage, Azure HD Insight, Hadoop, of course. Spark is being used, Databricks is being used, Kafka is being used for the real-time streaming, Hive is being used, Apache HBase, Azure Synapse for the data warehouse, and the Azure SQL solution. So these are the very common technology, or I can say as a very handy technology what you will be seeing across almost all the projects that you might be encountering. So with this, I would like to just so give this this opportunity to you guys. So this is all what I have to share. So now I'll just so keep it open for you guys. If you have any questions for me, for Ram, please do ask.
Yeah, so Pritam, I'll be taking some questions. I have they have already written on chat. So guys, just to add, the previous you have seen a lot of tools in the previous slide. In our bootcamp also, almost all these tools will be covered, right? So that by the time you graduate from this program, you are well versed. You can hit the ground running, right? So Pritam, the first question is from Nitish, which is around data engineering itself. So do we need to be well versed in DS algo concepts for data engineering role?
Okay, so this is actually, so if you remember about that set diagram, right? So we actually have shown that so data engineers also need to be a good software engineer, right? But yes, so to tell you this, that if you actually want to crack a very core technical company, right? So it's very important that you should be good in the algorithm also, because at the end of the day, you have to write a very complicated program to make sure that how exactly your data transformation works. So you need to know Spark, Flink, but on top of this, you need to know a good algorithm, or what data structure that you are using. So this plays a very important role, particularly if you are joining a very core tech companies, right? But yes, to tell you this thing, that to be super expert in DSA is not required for data engineers, but it does make sense that if you are preparing for FANG and all, then yes, of course.
So there's one more question, which is again a little bit technical, is how is the unstructured data stored and queried in terms of big data?
Yeah, so this is actually a bit tricky question to probably answer in this short session, but maybe so one particular thing which I can tell you is this, that so unstructured data. So one example I can give you is a binary data, right? Probably you are storing a audio file, right? And so how do you parse the audio file? So one of the big use cases is this, that so in audio file you want to actually so get only some particular portion when you're talking about some technology. So this is a so we have a lot of tools. So that they do that. So how they do it is this, that we use a concept called annotations. Okay, so your data is being annotated, and then it will be stored into a format which is actually can be read by a proper schema. So which means that you have got, so Spark already have like say if you actually so talk about the Spark 3.x, so Spark already have actually so given the support out of the box that you can actually do a spark.read and you can actually so read the data format in binary, and that Spark by default will be doing the annotations and will be creating a schema for you, and then so going forward the read is going to be normal.
Okay. So there is one more question, Pritam, which is what is the fast storage and why it is required?
Sorry, Ram, can you just repeat the question once again?
What is the fast storage and why it is required?
Okay, so fast storage, I think you might be asking it from that Netflix architecture, right? So fast storage is the one, that where, so we talk about that how efficiently you are storing your data, right? So if you want to make sure that your query is performing really well, right? So in that case, you also have to make sure that your query or your data is being stored in a much efficient way, right? So the storage does play a very important role when you are trying to make a query runs much faster. So it is not exactly about how well you're writing a SQL query. It is also about how you're storing your data, right? How your data is partitioned, how you're doing bucketing, how you're doing salting internally. So these all things play a very important role. So that is the reason, we sometimes, like where we have got dashboard needs, we make sure that the data, where we get for the dashboard purpose, it should come from some particular storage, which is very highly optimized for the query reads. So that's the reason, we create the fast storage. And particularly in that example, so you might have seen that they are using Redshift from Amazon, and they are also using Snowflake. And Snowflake is actually a data warehouse solution.
Right. So there's one question from Prajesh, is that, how can anyone do data engineering project during the final year based on the business problem? I think there's a lot of things for data science, but this question is around the data engineering.
Data engineering, probably, we have a lot of problems actually. So the problem which I showed you here, right? So this is actually one of the problem actually, right? So right now for Netflix also, they have made a lot of their data sets available for the public, right? So all the statistics that I'm sharing you is actually from those data what they have made public, right? So a lot of all the analytics company, they have taken the data and they have tried to build the analytics what they want to share across the world, right? So similarly, just Google about it, So like you will be finding a lot of projects to practice on it. If you want, I can also help you on this. I can actually help you to get some project to do some hands-on to build your data engineering skills. So so this is something what you can easily find in Google, and I can also help you in doing this.
Okay. Then there's a future-oriented question from Arman side. So after Spark, what might be the next big thing in this industry?
Okay, after Spark. So look, so now actually Spark is going to be there for quite a long time. Okay, because that the way how the development is being done from Cloudera and also from Databricks. So Spark is going to be there for quite a long time. So particularly for the processing part or particularly for the compute part, right? So if you talk about the next big thing, right? So probably in the big data or in the computing, it's going to be Kubernetes. Okay, so it is going to be Kubernetes, and it is going to be, yes, of course, like I'm talking about like in the engineering world. Okay, I'm talking about the science world. Science is about data science, about in machine learning, deep learning, advanced NLP, and all these things. So I'm not talking about those things. So those things have their own genre. How people actually grow in the ladder, right? But I'm talking about more in the engineering. So in the engineering, now we have Spark. Flink is also getting a very so good fame right now, because as I told you in the very beginning, right, that right now the batch analytics is moving towards the real-time analytics, right? And Spark streaming is not that much powerful as Flink, right? So going forward, Flink will also get a big priority, and also the next thing which I would suggest is actually Kubernetes, because Spark is also right now. So we can run Spark on Kubernetes, and Kubernetes will be, so giving us the support of the application manager, the same thing that is being done by Yarn or maybe Meso.
Great. So, Prithviraj, probably this is the last question for the day, right? And probably this is something which is in mind of a lot of people who are graduating recently, right? So, most of the companies mention experience for hiring data engineers. How can fresher enter into the industry?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. So when I also hire, I do expect that, as a fresher also, so we also hire some fresher, right? But even for the fresher also, so when we actually hire a software engineer as a fresher and a data engineer as a fresher, the requirements are a bit different. That we'll be expecting you, or as a fresher, to be at least having one hands-on experience on some of the project, right? And how you can do that, if you ask me that, that how we can do this, because we are freshers, right? I told you about that particular project. Just Google about it. You can learn it right now, and just Google about some of the problem statements, right? And just have a very brief idea about the components that we use in a data engineering pipeline. So none of the company, will be expecting you to be a super expert the time when you're joining, being a fresher, right? And this particular thing is pretty much understandable by all the recruiters. and even the technical leads also. So who hire you or who takes your co-technical interviews, right? So they will be clear about it, but they'll be expecting you not to be coming from a very, I would say base background. So it's important that at least you have a bit of idea on how usually data analytics work. How do you really work with a SQL query? Okay, how do you perform a little bit of the visualizations, right? So this kind of things will be expected from a fresher if you are trying to apply for data engineering role. That is very important. Understand this.
Thanks, Pritam. I think this is a time where we should close the session. We have already crossed the 1 hour that we have asked you for. Right. Thanks a lot for such a wonderful session. It was very, very engrossing. I really loved the concept that you have bring as well as the case study. Right. And thanks also for taking so many questions. I think we have exhausted most of the questions. Right. Guys, please give him the big hand for having such an awesome session. Thanks again, Pritam. Have a wonderful evening. And thanks, everyone. Have a nice remaining day ahead and have a nice weekend also.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ram.
Yeah. And please, register on the link that I have shared. Some of our educational counselors will reach out to you in case if you have interest in data engineering.
Ram, I mean, I'm extremely sorry. I'll just take one question from Suhail. I think so he was asking, so he was trying to ask one question from a very long time. So Suhail, please go ahead and ask your questions.
Sir, hello.
Yes, Suhail, please go on.
Sir, are you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go on, Suhail.
Okay, sir. So actually, I'm a graduation in BCom line. Okay, I'm not just engineering faculty. But sir, I have one question. Why coding language is important in engineering field, data engineering?
Well, this is a very interesting question. So thanks for asking this question. So look, I mean, so right now the way how we develop the transformations, right? So like say if I just take a very real-time example of, so when we write a Spark job, right? Say that, I mean, you already have, so let's go for a ELT concept, right? So where you do the extraction and then load to some kind of storage and then you do the transformation, right? And the transformation is did by using Spark, example wise, right? And you're using Spark batch, right? So in this, so when you write the Spark job, right? So you need to actually use a language that you say you can go for Spark with Scala or PySpark, right? So in that, you need to understand that how do you do the basic transformations of your data. So you'll be working with data frames, right? So you have a data being stored into some kind of storage. You have to actually create data frames in Spark, and then on that data frames you have to perform transformations, right? And transformations, I mean, in Spark concept, like actions. So those all concepts you have to write in code only, right? But let me tell you one thing. But let me just tell you one thing, Suhail, that going forward, we are nowadays, I mean, probably like say in the next 3 years or 4 years, or maybe 5 years down the line, right? Everything is happening by using drag and drop. So in Azure, Microsoft is working so hard to make sure that, that the people does not have to spend a lot of time in learning programming language. And instead of that, they'll be just, so having the understanding of the business and the problem and how to actually create the logical flow out of it.
Right. I have 8-year experience. Yes. I have 8-year experience, but in Excel, TidyRPin, and just like software basis. But I know that little bit, just like Python language and JavaScript. This is a coding language.
Yes.
So Suhail, actually, you can try more into
because I know that this is a Python long.
So Suhail, I think probably the data analytics will be the much better path for you. Hello.
Hello, sir. I think a network problem that time.
Okay. No, Suhail, what I was saying is, probably that analytics is a much better path for you because you already have a lot of business knowledge, right? And that's where the data, your in analytics, your business knowledge will also come into picture. So more than data engineering, probably data science or something with related to analytics will be a much better career for you or people who are coming from economics background or or people who are maybe coming from the BCom background.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, sir. Thank you for giving the answer of question. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks a lot, Suhail.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right.
Thanks, Pritam. Good night.
Thanks a lot, guys, once again, and have a great weekend ahead. Bye.